We're going to get fashionable tonight with a lime/puke green Gretsch. Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. The new Martin Gore signature Gretsch. This is advertised as two-tone smoke green, so it's more of like a lime green on the top, but then the edges are a bit of a dark green. I wasn't expecting the back to also be the darker green, but we've got our really cool fashionable back piece here. So hey, we get to learn about those things today. But this is a new made in Japan signature Gretsch guitar. So let's learn all about Martin Gore. He's the guitarist, second vocalist, and primary songwriter of the hit 80s-90s band Depeche Mode. Now for me personally, that name didn't ring any bells for me, but when I went through their discography, it's like, oh, okay, reach out and touch faith, guys, your own personal Jesus. They're best described as a seminal electric rock band. Some guys also call them synth pop. Basically, their songs are synthesizer driven. However, they've got enough cool guitar riffs thrown throughout their songs to keep my attention. And they have influenced so many different artists, even including Marilyn Manson. But with such a unique name, Depeche Mode, I wanted to look a bit more into it. Apparently, they lifted that from a fashion magazine, and it translates from French to Fashion Update or Fashion News Dispatch. So rather than transforming to attack mode, it's more of a French mode. So then I started thinking about pie. Why do we say apple pie a la mode? It's because you're putting ice cream on it. But if you think about it, it's because you're putting a fancy ice cream hat on your pie. So you're making it fashionable. Because apparently it was some old magazine that first coined that phrase. And now we think of it as being served in a certain style, such as with ice cream. But the reason why we have this on the show is a viewer wanted to new guitar day it. Actually, he was having a hard time finding these. He reached out to Gretsch, and apparently there are only 75 of these things. And he came to me because he couldn't find one. We were initially going to import one of these from Japan, and unfortunately have to pay a quite hefty premium to do that. But thankfully, before I secured that down, an hour later, one showed up on Reverb. So he saved himself nearly $1,500. And since then, a few more have shown up on Reverb if this review makes you interested in one. But these are running $3,000 brand new. Now, besides being a Martin Gore signature, this is based off of Gretsch's anniversary model. When I first read that, I thought, is this an anniversary of his? But no, they actually have quite a few of these. But if you dig this finish, they actually do have a different one that's about $400 less expensive. I will say, comparing the colors online, it seems like the Martin Gore one might be a little bit more vibrant on the top, but you can see things like the tailpiece is different, the bridge style, your headstock has a different badge, but they're actually constructed vastly different. The Martin Gore has a center block, whereas the regular ones are complete hollow body. So you can get close with the G6 118 T60, this one being the G6 618. But Paul's personal suggestions of his favorite Depeche Mode songs for guitarists are Enjoy the Silence, Strange Love, Ghosts Again intro, as well as the Dream On and I Feel You intro. So I certainly appreciate the opportunity to check out something different on the show, and I guess we'll have to figure out if I can play those songs or not. They don't seem too hard. And that's what's great about their music. It's not necessarily hard to play, but it's hard to think of catchy things that are simple, and that's the beauty of their music. And we'll talk about why we've got 2 toggle switches, a knob up here, a couple knobs over there, over on the workbench. But let's see what you get for that price. You get a hardshell case that's actually quite nice. Like, sometimes there's cheaper looking ones of these black Tolexes. This one's like right in between a really high end and cheap. But the best part are the latches actually line up and function. Isn't that a novel idea? And hey, according to the tag, this is a Canadian-made TKL case. But you've got the Gretsch badge on the side, and otherwise I did not see any other branding. But knowing that there was a green guitar inside, even though the stitching is technically yellow, it kind of vaguely matches the guitar, so that's cool. But it's a really nice red interior. You've got your lid ribbon. One small complaint is your pocket's not very big. So small, in fact, you can't even put your case candy in it. But we've got the Gretsch OK card. That's the quality control assessment being done on 12/16 of 24. And what looks like some sort of a reissue tag, talking about the Hylotron guitar heads, which is talking about the pickups, but we'll cover that later. The next one talks about your fingerboard inlays, the Neoclassical. And it looks like you get some sort of a Gretsch guitar guide, info on their 2-year limited warranty. And then here we go. I was curious if there was going to be one in there. It's a COA with a nice shiny Gretsch logo. And there's also a case key in there, as well as a truss rod wrench and Allen key. So to learn more about the secrets of this Gretsch, let's go ahead and throw it over to the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs. let's go ahead and talk about all these things. So the pickups are known as Hylotrons. Maybe it's Hilotron, I'm not sure. But they're advertised as high fidelio, stereo singing, brilliant highs, mellow lows, ultra modern styling, and lively response. But unlike many surrounded pickups, the surround is just there for decoration. It's kind of an art deco thing, where it's actually clear and acrylic, but it has the color on the backside to make it look silver. But the design in between it is etched, and then ever so slightly raised in 3 sections. Well, that's got a pretty cool effect to it from a little bit away. But the pickup itself is actually secured utilizing these 2 screws directly into the body. And it appears these are TV Jones single coils, marked TV HT. Hylotone. And they have this really cool Gretsch branding on the outside, but you'll notice your pull pieces are on the lower position, so both of the pickups are the same in that aspect. This one's just labeled bridge on the backside. And you can see they've got some foam blocks along the edge to help set your height adjustment. And that's cool how they crafted that. They just have a little wooden shelf right in there, but then everything else is carved away out of your center block. That is finished beautifully. But to learn more, let's break out our endoscope. So right underneath our neck, we can actually see the construction of it. This is supposed to be entirely maple. So you got this green section right here. That is constructed just like an ES335 in the fact that they layer maple together. Meaning, even though we actually have what looks like a carved top, it has been pressed into that particular shape. But then it looks like you have a couple of pieces of maple joining on underneath it before you get to the main maple center block down here. That's some great wood grain. Well, what's kind of interesting is if you peek right under here, they actually are just using that as kind of a bracing system to create those shelves we were looking at. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So that's just an additional little maple block there that they put in to make the pickups work. So that's why you have this cavity down here. If you need a good place to hide some money, that might be a spot. Then as we continue down into here, we can see our kerfed edges. That's looking very clean and exceptional. And we've got one of our pots over here. Remember that capacitor right there. That'll become important when we talk about the electronics. But here's a really good spot to see that additional maple layer that creates those legs. Similar to how Gibson does the bracing, but you've got some decent wire management in here. But oof, one of our little kerflings has a split in it. Not a huge deal by any means, just something I noticed. It's just so pure and white. It's some good looking maple. And here we can see the center block where it's completely solid before they chopped it up for the pickups. And here's our electronics. Everything's looking good there, but oh, what is that? That's something else that you'll just have to keep in mind for that backplate that we were talking about earlier. That looks so trashy, especially because when you're just looking in the F-holes normally, it highlights it. Maybe that's just something Gretsch guys have come to love and appreciate. But I think it'd be really cool if they put like a decorative bolt over top of it or something. In case you're curious if there was any other cavities underneath our bridge, similar to how there was one in this area. No, that becomes solid right here. But I like how they have a natural finish over top of it. Really trying to step up their game. I like that. But now we'll dive into this F-hole. We can see our handcrafted in Japan Gretsch tag, as well as our model that we were talking about, and our particular serial number dating it to 2024. We've got more of everyone's favorite screws coming straight through the back. You know you're going to have some into the center block as well. But here's some more of our kerfing. And then up here we've got our 2 toggle switches. Once again, keep in mind that one has 2 capacitors running to it, whereas this one has 0. And oh, would you look at that? That is our top strap button. That's kind of cool. It's hard to see, but right behind our toggle switch right there, that's where it looks like they put a block of mahogany. Almost everything's maple in this thing, but then they do a mahogany piece right there, just to give that strap button something to sink into. If you're curious if the top wood grain had any flamed figuring, nope, looks like they use plain maple, but it actually seems to be really nice quality, besides that one kerfing. But here's a look at the bottom side of our pot. You can see they're using CTS. So that was fun to look inside one that has a center block. So remember, that's different from the other one that's offered in the same finish. But now let's talk about the electronics themselves. What are our knobs? So this is a master volume control, but it also has a treble bleed circuit. So that's why you had the capacitor attached to that. So as you roll it off, it's going to maintain your highs. But when you come down here, these are also volume controls, but for each individual pickup. So I would assume this is the neck, and then this is the bridge. That way, if you want to set this up in a particular way, like at 7 or 5, you can do that. And if you ever need to cut the sound to the guitar, you can mess around with the master. There's many different ways to play around with that. But then, why do we have 2 toggle switches? Again, remember, this one has a bunch of capacitors to it. You might have noticed we do not have a tone control. You would think on a jazzy looking guitar like this, you would want a tone control. Well, that one is advertised as a tone color switch. You can see the official marketing right here, but it looks like position 1 is a low, position 2 is like normal, then position 3 is a little bit more shrill. So we'll find out more about that when we do the playing sample. But otherwise, this is just a regular toggle switch, neck, middle, and bridge. So stock from the factory, you have 9 different options. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Our output jack is located over on the side, and our readings within the circuit, the neck is 3.38 k ohms. They play together at 1.88 and 4.19 in the bridge, so relatively low wind. And before we move on from the electronics, did you check out how fancy the knobs are? It's got a G for Gretsch and it's pointing to what position you're at. Still kind of confusing because it almost goes all the way around, but it's kind of like a metal knurled knob, except for they just have a single band of it, not the entire thing. And if you wanted to replace it, you'd have to take out the set screw to remove the knob. Now there's 2 different types of floating bridges, a straight up floating one and then what they consider a pinned bridge. Now you might remember when we first got this guitar, the dealer had taped the bridge into place. The reason why you do that on a floating bridge system is they will move like this and it can scratch up the finish. So that is always a good practice. However, this is not a traditional floating bridge. It's actually a pinned bridge. So that means you got these little inserts in the body that help you know where the bridge should go. There you can see the inserts on the bottom side. They just fit right over top of that. That ensures your bridge doesn't move left to right at all, but it still gives you a bit of room if you need to adjust it as far as intonation. Otherwise, it's just a regular bridge. You can adjust the intonation there, but did you notice? This one actually has roller saddles. Now, despite not having a Bigsby, there are some guys that claim roller saddles are just better in general. So that's a spec for him. And that's not all the special features. This is actually a Tone Pros locking bridge. So you see those set screws right there? That makes it so, even over top of this guitar, it's really expensive. It's not going to fall. It's not going to break the guitar. That's nice from a setup standpoint. And once you have what you need, you lock it into place. As far as the tailpiece, it's just the G cutout version. However, unlike many Gibson trapeze tailpieces, the strings are actually locked into place. That's a complete solid block. So you don't just put the string underneath. It actually has to be fed through it. And then you've got your cutouts there just for stylizing. And then it secures to the bottom utilizing 3 screws. And then you've got your strap button here. And Gretsch has interesting strap buttons. They unscrew, then you're supposed to put your strap on it, and then it secures over top of that. So kind of like a strap lock system in a roundabout way. Assuming your strap isn't worn out too much that it would slip off of that. One last thing to touch upon is the pickguard itself. Just like the pickup rings, this is actually a clear material, but again, it's got the green backside and it shines through it, giving you that really cool look. So you got to be careful if you're ever removing this, because if you scratch the bottom of it, you'll see it through. I was shocked how heavy this pickguard is. Now keep in mind, this still has the bracket on. I doubt that weighs that much. But about 3.5 ounces? Yeah, that adds up on a guitar like this. And if you're wondering what that discoloration is around where the screw goes into the body, it's because they have these little felt pads on it to help space it. I think a really nice touch Martin Gore should have made them do is inlay an M and a G on the bridge in Mother of Pearl. That would have been fun. But if you're curious why he decided to go with Gretsch, apparently he's a big Gretsch head. He loves these guitars and he just naturally wanted to work with them. But you might notice the binding is actually 2-ply. So it's primarily white, but then you have a black purfling layer all around. It helps pop the binding quite a bit. I like it. But now we can move on from the body to our neck. Looking at our truss rod route, it appears to be a 2-piece maple neck with a walnut skunk stripe. And then this is an ebony fretboard. But we already talked about our small thumbnail inlays. But they are actually true mother of pearl. They are not pearloid. I call them the neoclassical style. But what's really fascinating to me is the side marker inlays are actually red. And that stands out like a sore thumb. Haha, thumbnail inlays, sore thumb. It's kind of like how Gibson does the tortoiseshell. It's just usually not that obnoxiously red, but I like it. But we've got 22 medium jumbo style frets. That's actually another difference between this signature model and the regular one. It's got one more fret. a standard 12-inch fretboard radius. It's a 24.6-inch scale. And then I measure the bone nut at 1.68 inches, increasing to 2.06 at the 12th, featuring a 0.85-inch first fret neck depth, and 0.92 by the 10th. You start to hit the heel by the 12th, so that's why I took it there. It's advertised as a Gretsch standard U-shaped neck profile, if that means anything to you. Here's a look at that neck at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. It almost just seems like a regular C shape up here, but you can definitely see that U starting to take form by the 12th. Now, moving on to the face of our headstock. We already briefly looked here, but now let's look at the actual truss rod itself. Looks like a similar style to what Gibson uses, but it has a 3-screw truss rod cover. It is multi-ply, black and white, carved through. Then the Gretsch logo is also mother of pearl, looking fancy. And then, yeah, if you don't want anniversary badge or Martin Gore's name on your guitar, you can technically remove it, have somebody custom make you one that has your name, because it's only attached by 4 screws. But here's an up-close look at this signature limited edition MG. Now we can move on to the backside. So what is this? It's basically just a slight cushioning, and for whatever reason, looking at these things on Reverb, I always thought this was a metal bracket around it, and then this gets like riveted to the guitar so you can't remove it. Now, those are just button snaps that are drilled into the back of the guitar. That's why we could see those screws going straight through. Here's a closer look at that. So you could technically install that on any guitar you want. But I think the reasoning behind that is A, it makes it a little bit more comfortable, and B, not as much buckle scratching, but I think this is worse than buckle scratching. But here's what the backside looks like. You can see it's got a cool little diamond-shaped pattern, and you've got your snaps. And once again, that's just a cloth-like material with a leather-like feel on the back. But it looks like they installed that on the guitar very early on, and you can actually see those squares imprint into the finish. So even if you want it off, it's there. And I can't imagine these would be comfortable on the backside of your guitar. But, you know, technically, if you really hated that visible one in the F-hole, you could remove it. Because let's face it, this will stay perfectly secure even without one. But here's what one of those looks like on the back. It's barbed, so it doesn't move. But that is a very shallow screw. I don't think they could get away with much shallower, but those ridges definitely eat into the guitar there. Oh, hey, and fun fact, if you're like me, first time ever messing with this, this is not a circle. It's actually an oblong oval. So there is a proper way to reinstall it, just in case you didn't notice. And if you think those keep it completely secure, nah, I mean, it'll still bunch up on you, but I doubt that'll be that big of an issue. I just wanted to show you that this is a flexible material, because until you've had one in person, you just sometimes don't understand what materials are. So that's a new one for me. I was honestly expecting a back control route to help them feed the electronics through it. Maybe some guitars are like that, but not this particular one. However, we do have more to talk about as far as the edges are concerned. So the back binding is also 2-ply with the white and the black purfling. It's not quite as apparent as the front. You gotta look for it. But check out how they do the edges. It's a very large piece of binding right there. And then they taper the neck in a little bit right there rather than it just being flush. And then that leaves a really pointy bit right there, which definitely can hit your hand and be uncomfortable. But hey, it's probably a vintage spec thing. But then you get a heel cap on top of that just to be extra fancy. And you get the continuation of your kind of more army green with the white. It reminds me of camo. But it's really the side profile shot that sells this guitar, because if you notice, your pick guard matches the edges. Then the side of the neck right here matches your edges as well. It's tasteful, if you like green anyway. I'm sure this is probably like the Antiqua finish. Some people dig it, some people don't. As far as moving up the rest of the neck, we already saw that it is a multi-piece maple one. And hey, here's another difference between the standard production one. We do not have the open back tuners. He has opted for the Kluson style. That read Kluson Deluxe. But you also have your serial number on the back of the headstock, denoting it was made in Japan and our 2024 serial. It does not appear that they are numbering them in any particular way. But man, for a semi-hollow, this thing's got some weight to it. 9 pounds, 9.6 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how these sound. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of an idea of the clean and the dirty tones this thing can produce. I will say these are very low wind pickups. You have to have them really close to your strings to get any usable tones. I actually had to restart this demo because I just had them way too low. But that can be a good thing. They're nice and mellow. But what you were just hearing is the regular tone positions and the regular pickups. So now we'll explore this tone switch together, with our neck in regular position first. So thinking of it as low, normal, and high, it gets you in the ballpark, but that almost has like a filter to it sound. Do the same thing with our bridge position, regular. I actually really like that down position. And then I learned something interesting about the middle position. Remember how we were talking about you can set your volumes for each pickup? I never even thought about the possibility of you can choose how you blend them in the middle. So right now this is full on 10. But if that's too bright, you can roll your bridge off just a bit. It's a subtle difference, but you might find one that you like best for recording, and then you never have to touch those knobs again. Now that's kind of interesting with the distorted tones. It almost gives you a slight wah pedal effect, but like you're not moving it, just keeping it in a position. It really does have some fun riffs in the songs if you listen to them. And earlier I called them simple, but that's the best way to hook people into your music that aren't necessarily guitar players, because it's easy for them to remember. But if you're curious how loud this one is, because it does have the center block, probably because he likes to have some distortion and he doesn't want it feeding back on stage, thought I would do an acoustic test. It's not as loud as I thought it was going to be. And that's not me picking softly either. That's hard. Versus soft. So now let me know all about the new Martin Gore signature Gretsch. What are my final thoughts on this? Gotta say, thank you, Paul, for sharing your guitar with us, because I learned a lot about music today. This is the way I learn about artists, is through their signature guitars. I just have a weird brain like that. I enjoy electric guitars first and music second. So it's always good to have an inspiration behind learning some new riffs. The music might not be for everyone, but if you're a guitar player, just listen for those guitar riffs and I think you'll enjoy it. Or if you're looking for something a little bit more mellow. Now, granted, there's a bunch of different songs within their discography, as we talked about earlier. But as far as the guitar, I did find this to be rather heavy for a semi-hollow, almost 10 pounds, so gigging with it long-term on stage, that might not be for everybody. I also found the frets to be rather small on this model, despite being called medium jumbos. And as far as the U-shaped neck, in my opinion, it just kind of feels like a C that doesn't have quite as much shoulder to it, but it's definitely more towards the slim side, in my opinion. And as far as the color, that's either gonna be a love it or leave it type thing. I like it though, it's grown on me, it's unique. But alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoyed, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow on the next one. Take care.